Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Fill us up on the web at ntnm.org. Jewish Chicago will be out for your early voting pleasure. We're planning the largest, over 70,000 circulation in print, not to mention, our thousands on the web that keep growing and growing and growing. So make sure you look for Jewish Chicago for the start of early voting with the biggest guide you'll see to the election just about anywhere, especially about judges. It is a pleasure to introduce you to the leading judicial blogger in the Illinois area, not to mention Cook County or whatever, the only judicial blogger in Chicago, Cook County, and Illinois. And that's Jack Leyhane. Jack, how you doing?
Avi, thanks for having me back. It does take some of the luster off the kudos to be the only one.
Right, but
that makes me also by default the worst.
Well, in theory, it does make you the worst. But you know what it also does? It means that you're doing a good enough job that nobody else feels the need to chip in more. You're supplying people with what they need, and there's no reason to have anybody else. Plus, I know you're making so much money off this. It's not even funny.
Here. Let me look into the camera here. Look into the anybody who wants to do this. Let me know. Actually, I've heard from Aldertrack they're gonna cover judicial races for the first time.
Nice.
And so I just got an email from the fellow over there and sent me some stuff, and I actually got a couple of websites that I didn't know about, which will be coming out by the time this is out.
Cool.
So that was kind of a neat thing. So but for whatever reason, there's just not people out there that want to do this.
No, that's true. By the way, let me remind you also before we start that when you were here last time, you said there were a couple other things you wanted to mention, and if you remember what they were, you can bring them up this time.
Oh, I know I was on the special Christmas Eve episode of Northtown News Magazine, but I don't remember now what exactly that was.
Ho, ho,
ho. It was nice. We had the family gathered around, and let's watch the special Christmas Eve episode. But no, it's good. So what can we talk about now?
So let's talk about, you see any general overall trends? You see, in the past, once upon a time, if you were an Irish male, you were going to do just fine. Is there any kind of demographics you see, in place when you look at the different races?
Well, this is going to be a little bit of an Irish renaissance in this judicial election, in that we have a number of Irish candidates who got slated, or people with Irish-sounding names. Remember, it's not a matter of actual ethnicity; it's how the name sounds, and that's how the LaRouches got in way back when, in the 80s.
That's correct.
It wasn't a matter of the names having any special significance. It was they were non-threatening, non-ethnic, friendly-sounding names.
Right.
They
One
just
of my
happened to
favorite
belong to nuts.
Who's a judge is a Filipino.
Yeah, and so there you have it. So we have. Some people, Judge Ron Riley, who was retired as the presiding judge of the 6th Municipal District, was an African American. But when primaries on St. Patrick's Day, Riley's a good name to have. And we've got a number of candidates who are running this year who've got
the primary St. Patrick's Day.
Well, right around St. Patrick's Day. It's within a couple of days. The primary this year is March 15th. The feast of St. Patrick is the 17th. So there's a reason for that. There's a reason why this works out that way. I know. See, now Avi thought it was always because of Purim, but it's not. It's not.
You're right.
But it's not really the case. Anyway, the news today is that the CFL endorsements came out, and there's kind of we're doing this in mid-January. A couple of the slated candidates got bypassed, apparently, and this is from comments that I'm getting on the blog, apparently because some of these candidates represented pro-management clients or work for pro-management firms in private practice. So they were kind of blackballed by the unions, and that's kind of interesting.
I don't like that, to tell you the truth, because I feel if you're a lawyer, everybody's entitled to fair representation, whether you agree with their cause or not. Even the worst criminal is entitled to fair representation.
Everybody who's ever practiced law has represented people who are, not so nice. Think of anybody who works in the public defender's office. We don't tar them with the the misdeeds of their clients. These are honorable, decent people doing a very difficult and thankless job.
Yep.
And you have, I don't know why we can't understand that sometimes in private practice you represent people whose opinions you may not necessarily agree with 100%. In fact, a lot of times you don't agree with them at all.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, believe me, I know that when I talk to judge friends of mine, and not judge friends, lawyer friends, some of them represent people that they absolutely would like to see them lose, except it's not their job. Their job is to help them in every way they can.
Right. I mean, you have a professional obligation to represent them, fairly and within the bounds of zealous representation, ethical representation. But that doesn't mean you adopt who they are or what they are, or their tactics or their beliefs. You represent them within the law.
See, to me, this is almost like this country is getting too narrow-minded and bigoted in so many ways. It's not even funny.
Well, the one example I can point out is Devlin Shoup, who was appointed to the bench by the Supreme Court, was slated by the Democratic Party, but he was passed over by the Chicago Federation of Labor in favor of Mary Kathleen McHugh. Now, Mary Kathleen McHugh is a great ballot name, and the CFL endorsement isn't going to hurt.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. There are objections pending in her race, and there's objections. The other candidate in that race is Brian O'Hara. We'll see how it happens. But that's the Carnesis vacancy countywide. Sean Chedhuri, who was slated countywide, he was one of the alternates who was got pre-slated.
Yeah.
He was passed over by the Chicago Federation of Labor. I don't think that's the reason he was passed over in terms of representing pro-labor interests or anti-labor interests. I know Shoup's firm, apparently, his former firm, was it Leyhane Munchen or something, had a reputation as a management law firm. Anyway, Sean Chedhuri was passed over in favor of Carolyn Gallagher. But for the most part, the Chicago Federation of Labor either followed the endorsements of the Democratic Party or made no endorsements. So it's kind of interesting. That's up today. There are trends in, at this point we're now getting into the real serious campaigning. I mean, we're trying to work through the objections. We're going to have some resolution of that within a very few weeks because we have to get the ballots printed.
Right.
Early voting is going to start one way or the other. We're going to have the ratings of the bar associations coming out, and let's be clear here. Bar associations do not endorse candidates. A lot of people get confused by this. They see, well, somebody's been endorsed by the Chicago Bar Association. Tain't so. They don't endorse candidates. They recommend somebody, or they say they're qualified or they're not qualified. The same with all the alliance bar associations. Naturally there's exceptions. The Advocates, the Polish American law group, does make political endorsements.
Okay.
But they're not part of the alliance. So there are, and one thing I would ask, in terms of people who are watching, if you have the union endorsement, this is for the candidates and for their supporters. If you have a union endorsement, I need, and people will send me emails all the time, say, please, put this up that I've been endorsed by the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. I'd love to do it, but I'd like to see the letter to document it. In fact, I'd like to see the letter that says, we've endorsed these 7 candidates or these 6 candidates, because that's the information I want to put out there. Not just that Avi Myers got endorsed, but that, there's all these other people who did.
I got you. At this point, Mickey's hands are really there.
Yeah.
And we barely started. I want to thank you very much, Jack Leyhane, for what it's worth. Best judicial blog around. I read it all the time. I want to thank my entire technical Sonny Hirsch. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Election Day coming sooner than you think. Bye.